Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me now? Sorry about that, guys. I apologize. I'm not very good with technology. Where was I? Oh, yes. Can everyone turn on their cameras? I want to see everyone's pretty faces. Lovely. Thank you all. Thank you all. Okay. I'm going to start with attendance to make sure everyone's here. Caitlin.
Yeah.
Thank you. James. No James. Lily.
I'm here, but I'm a little busy and my service is kind of weird.
Okay, that's okay. Thanks for joining us today anyways. Samantha. Okay, Samantha's not here. Okay, I'm just gonna move on. Oh, James joined us. Hello, James.
Oh, hey, sorry I'm late.
That's
I
okay.
just kind of lost track of time. That's my bad.
That's all right. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Okay, today we'll be Today we will be discussing the reading that I sent to you guys yesterday via email. Did everyone get that?
What email?
Oh, you should have gotten an email yesterday about a reading that you're supposed to do today. Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I didn't get an email. See, look, there's our space.
Yeah,
Oh,
actually.
okay. Well, that's okay. It's going to be a group discussion. So as long as some people have read it, that's okay. So thank you to the people who read it. Let's start with the title. What do we think the title means?
What's the title?
The title is A Worn Path.
Oh my God, Lily, is that your sister in the back?
That's my mom back there. I'm her sister.
Oh my God.
It looks just
You
like
look
you.
great.
Oh,
You guys are so beautiful.
how sweet.
You guys want to see the snow?
Yes, show me. Oh my God, snow. That's amazing. Oh my God.
Wow. Where
That's
are you,
beautiful.
Lily? Where are you joining us from today?
Look at Miss Thornsbury trying to get to know her students.
I'm in Montana. We're in West Yellowstone, Montana.
Wow.
We just saw like a really cool elk too, and we had to pull over.
Oh my God, guess what I'm doing right now?
What?
I got raw cookie dough.
What time is it? Like, what flavor? Like chocolate chip? Oh, I like chocolate chip. Really? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone think anything about the title? Does anyone
What was
have
the title?
feelings? It's A Worn Path. Here, I'll put it.
Wait, are we still in class?
Warren? WORN?
A Worn Path.
Warren Path.
I think it sets up the story. Wouldn't you agree? I think a worn path seems to be associated with the path that the character is walking down, and also indicates that she walks this path consistently, right? Caitlin, do you agree? Okay. Lily, how about you?
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
Good. Thank you for your input, Lily. Okay. So the title gives us a sense as to the direction that the story will take, and it also sets the tone for the story. Can anyone tell me what tone is? Anyone know what tone is? Caitlin, do you want to tell us what tone is?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Will you think on that?
Is it like kind of like the mood or like the
Yes.
vibe of
yes.
the story? Okay, cool.
Very
I
good,
think
James.
like, like when you're supposed to like when your parents say don't have that tone with me, I think it's something like that.
Yes, that's a great example, Lily. Thank you.
Aren't we
Okay.
talking like tone of passage though, not like tone of voice?
Oh, well, that's an interesting point.
Just saying.
Okay, very good, Caitlin.
But I think of the tone when I read it, like the tone that I'm reading it in.
No, it's not really the tone that you read. It's kind of the tone that the author like.
No, I
Yeah.
think it's like the tone that the reader
No,
takes.
it's not
like
really
the author
something
like
you
sets
just
it up
kinda-
for the reader to take a certain tone.
You know this by fact.
I mean, that's
You
my
have evidence to
interpretation,
back
so you
this up.
just take it or leave it.
Okay. We're all very strongly opinionated here, and and I really appreciate that. Let's move on to our reading journals. Can everyone pull up their journals for this reading?
I didn't know there was a reading journal.
Oh, okay. Well, it has been on the Canvas board for 2 weeks now, so make sure
Wait,
you're checking
what?
that, everyone.
How do we access Canvas? I didn't know that we had that.
You didn't know we had Canvas?
No.
Okay. You might want to talk to IT about that. I'm not great
Oh,
with technology.
How do I
myself.
wait? But like, do I just like email IT?
Yes, do the email.
Okay, I might have to email you about that later.
Okay. Yeah, just stay after class with me and we can chat. Okay. Would anyone like to share their reading journals?
What's the book called again?
A Worn Path.
This is my friend Josie. Yo, this is
Miss Thornsbury, where did your glasses go?
Oh, I misplaced
It's
them.
Doctor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Thornsbury to everyone.
You're right, Caitlin. I can't find them.
What? How would you lose them that fast? Oh, is it because you don't have your glasses?
Okay. Getting back on track. Would anyone like to share a reading journal? Please.
Anyone do their reading journal?
Selfie? Yeah. Let's take a selfie. I mean, I didn't do the reading journal because I didn't know we had that, but I think that like the part where she had to walk down this path and then like she ran into that hunter, and I just think that part was like really cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. Thanks for sharing, Willie. Did anyone else think that was cool?
I did.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Good. I'm glad you all are really connecting with the reading.
She really shows survivor instincts.
Mm-hmm. She's a survivor. I think we can all take something from that.
Yeah, survive in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, yeah, because you know,
Yeah, I can really connect because like I've been surviving in Yellowstone and it's been really hard.
you've been surviving.
Yeah. There's no service at all.
Oh my
Oh.
God, what a terrible issue to have.
I just really connected to her because it's been so difficult.
I'm
Wow.
sure. Yeah, we can really see how a worn path can connect to real life, haven't we? It's a great novel for that.
For
Yeah.
sure, it has great tone.
I'm so glad you think that, Caitlin.
Yeah.
That was a great reference to what we were discussing
I
earlier.
mean, what kind of tone do you think it has, Caitlin?
I just kind of said like strength, surviving, like, you know, beating the odds,
Hmm. I think resilience is like a good point of like theme too.
confident,
Yeah.
feminism.
Agree, Professor?
I would agree. I think everyone's making really excellent points, and I think it can have a different tone for each person reading and each time you read it. Even it's one of those novels.
Yeah,
That's what
you know,
I just said
as time
earlier.
goes on, you can more relate to the book. The book
Exactly.
is never done. It's never it's not a done read. You know what I mean? You can't finish the read.
Yes. Exactly. Okay. I think now we're going to move on to the next part of this lesson. I'm going to share my screen with you all to show you a PowerPoint.
Hold on. Before you move on, I have to get in an elevator and I might lose you guys. So could you just wait a minute?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm perfect. So.
Okay. Now I'm going to share
pretty
my
this
screen with
looks.
you guys.
Look how pretty.
Oh, that's beautiful, Caitlin. Okay. I'm going to
Thank
share
you.
my screen with you guys so you can see the next part of this lesson.
Oh my God, I have a
Oh.
cold.
Oh, that's really pretty.
Wow. Do you all remember
you
how
so
I share the
jealous?
screen? Do I press this red button here?
Yeah,
There's-
press the red button. That's red's always the right button.
Okay. Thank you all.
No, I
I'm
think there's like
learning.
something in the very middle that says share screen.
Oh, it,
Yes, I'm Dr. Tiffany Wheeler, and I am an associate professor of education at Transy, and I am also the education program director here.
Belinda Sly, and I'm a professor of biology.
okay, walk me through like one of your typical classes, I would say. Like, do you like to do a lot of group work? Or are you more of a lecture style professor? How do you like to set up your class?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really use a combination of approaches.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that I'm a straight lecture professor at all. I do what I think of as more mini type lectures, where if there are particular concepts that I feel like need more direct attention and where I'm using Google Slides or using charts or different things like that, I will do that, kind of thing, but it's never going to be for an entire class period where I would lecture like that, because I just feel like as an educator, a longtime educator, I do know that students have such different approaches to learning and the ways that they engage with learning. So in a typical class period, there might be, actually, I would say I lean more towards seminar style. So there's a lot of discussion in my classes.
I would say that I'm like 70 to 80% lecture based. With that said, I try to keep it really informal, where I'm constantly asking questions throughout, and hopefully students are asking questions as well. I've definitely tried to do more of the group work, and it works better for some courses, not so great. I remember, oh my gosh, it's probably been like 12 years ago, where I was trying to incorporate more group work into an upper level biology class. And I had a student say to me, they're like, I want to hear what you have to say, not necessarily what my classmates have to say. And, kind of like hurt my feelings a little bit because I was trying something different.
Yeah.
And, I had carefully prepared these questions thinking that it was still going to be a good teaching method. But I do try to keep that in mind. So I would say, I don't know, 70-80%, that might be a high estimate, but I do think in my biology classes, people would say it's primarily lecture based. Sorry, I kind of lost my train for a second.
You're good. You're doing great.
Yeah. Now I definitely will maybe say, like, give in genetics, I'll give a problem, and I'll say, okay, get together with the person next to you and work on this problem, and then, we'll come back. So I do kind of infuse group work throughout, but we're always kind of coming back together to make sure everybody's on, the same page and kind of hearing what other people say.
For students who don't naturally like to speak up in class or engage with the conversation, how do you kind of pull them into the conversation?
That's a wonderful question. I don't really believe in spotlighting, and that's why. So sometimes if somebody, like in our whole group discussion, if somebody is a little more reticent in our whole group discussion, but sometimes they will do better if they're with a partner or if they're in a group. But other things too, sometimes they might have to write something too. And so they might have to do like a quick write or an entry slip. Like sometimes I might have students when they come into class and I'll give them a prompt and they have to respond to it. And a lot of times it's based on the readings, but that's a way that they can participate. Or if they contribute like to a Google Doc in their group, and then that way, they contribute that way.
I do really struggle with that because I don't want to induce even more anxiety. I know everyone is different, absolutely. So sometimes it's even just like the most subtle actions, like making eye contact with somebody and seeing if that person will kind of, maybe just give you a little bit of nod, or before class, or if I'm having them work in groups, like make sure to specifically reach out to all students, or maybe in particular the ones that don't talk as much, just getting them to get a little bit more comfortable talking with me, even if they're not going to be comfortable talking in front of the whole class. I feel like that's a step in the right direction. Because there's going to be students that are really comfortable talking, and that's great. But I do feel like to do a good job, I want to reach out to the students that have a little bit more trouble communicating, and hopefully then they'll feel comfortable coming to my office, and we can have discussions in that way. But of course there's always the problem of, do you give participation points, right? And then how do you grade those participation points if not everybody is talking in class? And so I found myself really moving away from giving a lot of points for participation, and just having, a certain aspect of the grade that's for it, but talking about how it's about attendance, of course, but also engagement, which I know it's still subjective, right? But it is, is this student like actually paying attention, or is this student, when I say get with a partner, are they actually, working on the problem? And so, that's the way for me to actually try to assess whether or not they're participating.
Transy was online. Did you find there were more barriers between you and your students, and can you kind of speak to that?
Sure, it was definitely a learning curve. because Transy before March 2020 had never had an online class ever. I mean, there are many universities and colleges that did do some online before the
Right.
pandemic began. Transy didn't. So it was all new to us. And I had used Zoom, for example, for like conference meetings and things like that, statewide meetings previously, but I had never used it as a teaching tool. So, like I said, there was a lot of learning and growth. And I will say that, yes, of course, there are barriers because, first of all, they're just not in the classroom with you. And I really like having my students close to me and being in the same room with them. So that, of course, is a barrier. And sometimes there were more distractions too. Some students were, even if when we did, Zoom synchronous sessions, so we were all together at the same time, but sometimes students had their cameras off. And I was one who I encouraged them to have their cameras on because I do feel like it facilitates better participation. But philosophically, I would not demand it because there are a lot of different reasons why people may have their cameras off, and a lot of them have to do with equity issues. And so I was sure never to demand it. But I certainly, most of the time they did, but it's just talking to those screens with people's names on them is definitely a barrier, And like I said, with the distractions, sometimes they were at home, their own homes, especially early on when Transy closed down. I mean, they were at their homes, so there were parents there were other siblings there, pets there, and even when they came back to campus and we were still online in the 2020-2021 academic year, you had roommates, even in the dorms here. I mean, there were just a lot of those kinds of things. And then you had issues with, not having good internet connection and that kind of thing. So those were some of the barriers, just not being able to, physically be with them. And then that was hard. Yeah, for sure.
I want to say, generally speaking, the thing that I think vast majority of educators experience, but I know really upset me the most, was being able to keep students engaged. And you could ask them to keep cameras on, but you couldn't really require it. And then for me, if I'm presenting slides, I can't necessarily see everybody's face. And so to not be getting those visual cues from people, like nodding their head that they're understanding, or, and then I think people are less likely to talk because they have to unmute, and that's kind of awkward. And I know, students would just not be there, right? Their camera would be off, class would end, and they're still logged on, and I get it, because now that we're doing a lot of meetings on Zoom, I totally get it. I mean, I will be in a meeting and I'll be doing other work. So I would say that was the number one obstacle for me, is simply how do you keep students engaged online? And I tell you, sometimes I felt like I was, I can take responsibility and say, oh, well, I have to make it more interesting, but I felt like I was doing everything I could, and it just didn't matter. It just absolutely doesn't matter. So that was really, really hard. But definitely in terms of biology and the sciences, the biggest thing for us was not being able to do labs in person. So, there's lots of kind of exercises you can do online that supposedly recreate the experience, but it's just not the same. And, in my field, there's particular tools that we use, like a micropipetter. Students have to physically have it in their hands and learn how to dial it right and learn how to use the instrument. And, that just didn't happen. And we've noticed, we now have students that are seniors, that missed out on a full year, and sometimes even more, depending on what their instructors were doing, of lab. And so they just don't have those basic skills. And skills aren't everything. On top of that, just the whole experience of, okay, I'm going to design an experiment. I'm going to, ask questions, make these careful observations, right? So that's definitely the discipline specific aspect.
How do you try and build like a good climate in your classroom, and how do you kind of build that trust between your students?
Sure. Well, I do believe in community building. And so I do employ community building activities at the beginning of the semester. I take that time. I feel like it's really important to do so even in larger classes. And so because I have always found that taking the time to do even one activity with one of my classes is the largest one I have, which is like 20 students, and we didn't do it all on the very first day or whatever because we had so many students, but over time, for example, they had to write a fact about themselves that we wouldn't ordinarily know, and it was really interesting, and they were excited because I would pull out a few at the beginning of each of the classes as the semester started. And then they had to guess who do we think we're talking about here. And it really helped me to learn, and not just me, but help my class, to learn more about each other that they would not normally learn. And they also said it really kept their attention because right away they wanted to know, that's how we started, the class. So just by learning about each other's interest and about what makes them who they are. And I do different things in different classes, of course, but by finding out, what I found is that students, through those types of activities, they find out the commonalities that they have with one another and the experiences. And so just by, learning about each other, being vulnerable to learn personal things about each other, that definitely builds trust. And I've seen that happen over and over again. So I just try to keep it that way where, students are very respectful to each other and that they really get to know each other. I mean, I prefer to have them call each other by name, not just, well, she said, or something like that.
Right.
And to build off what she said, I want you to say, to build off of, what Ellie said, and really get to know each other, where they're from, all of that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I think the climate, that's a great way to describe it. I try at the very beginning to say, I want this to be our little community. We're a team, right? We're all on the same side. And, I think I have a very informal way of talking, and I think that helps. I try to keep things lighthearted, to make people feel comfortable. Maybe being silly, etc. Like I really do think that helps. But again, not for everyone. So that's why, the out of class relationship or, interactions matter as well. So fortunately in lab, which, all of our biology classes do have labs, that's a chance where I get to know students even better because say we are doing something and then we have to wait 20 minutes for something to incubate. And so I can walk around and just chat with students. And I think that makes, that really, for me, seems to be where the closest relationships are formed, is by getting to know each other better during lab time.
Do you have any tips or advice as someone who's been in education their whole life really on how to be a better communicator in the classroom, whether if it's a teacher or a professor or a student, just how to better communicate in a classroom environment? Do you have any advice?
Well, that's a great question. I think honestly, and I know it sounds cliche and trite, but be who you are. If you're a professor, literally be yourself and take time to be relational with your students. I mean, I understand that there are natural boundaries that we have to maintain. I understand all of that. But let them know who you are as a person, and let them know that you don't know all the answers and that you don't do everything perfectly, and show some vulnerability. Students really like it when you show that you're a human. A couple of years ago during the 2021 academic year was a really tough year for me because my mother was ill and she eventually passed away during that fall semester, and I actually had to go to Michigan. It because that's where my parents live. And during the last 6 weeks of her life, I spent time teaching the classes online because we were all online at that point, and advocating for her, going to hospitals, going to nursing homes, and it was a lot to manage. But I was very open and honest with my students about what I was dealing with at that time, and so they appreciated that, and they appreciate that sometimes in life, life has a lot of challenges, and we have to be open about handling them, and so like I said, I wasn't pretending that everything was all great, because it really wasn't at that time. But of course, I still let my students know that I was there for them, and I was checking in with them and that kind of thing. But I was also dealing with, the most significant experience in my entire life, and it wasn't easy. And so they appreciated that sense of vulnerability, because if they are having issues, they feel like they can be comfortable in sharing those things with me. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you for sharing.
Sure. Yeah, it's just part of who I am, and so it's but I had to grow a lot, to get to that point where I could feel like I could really be that open about, I'm not really okay today. I'll just be honest, because we're often so expected just to sort of pretend that other things are not, affecting our lives, but we're living real life with real challenges, and
Sure,
certainly
yeah.
we've seen that, especially if anybody didn't realize that before the last few years. I think we realize that things can turn on a dime.
Definitely.
And so we have to be able to be open and be able to adjust and adaptable, and realize that we are fully complex human beings.
Well, I would definitely start off by saying is use like I just said, every single minute of that class time. All of the professors here have come to a small school. Their primary responsibility is teaching, so we could have gone to a big state school, and done more research, etc. So, I hope every single class period is a really valuable experience. So I think my advice would be, no matter how hard your day's been, no matter how tired you are, do your best to get everything you can out of class. And then hopefully, that you will, you'll learn so much, but you'll also better understand the assignments. You'll better understand context. So when you go to do assignments, it's not all about getting the grade, but I think students would find that they will do so much better on the work if they have actually been engaged in the class, and not just the reading or somebody else's notes.
What do you think your favorite part is about teaching?
Oh, it's always the relationships, hands down. I love learning. That's one of the reasons that I became a teacher, and is because I am a truly committed lifelong learner. I never stop learning, and I absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to share that with students. But it's really the connection that I have with them, the relationship that I have with them. To me, that's what teaching and learning, that's what it boils down to. And getting to know them and how to best support them. That's what I love.
Mm-hmm.
And I love seeing students grow, especially when I start having them as first year students or sophomores, and to see the growth over time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why commencement is such a special time, because when they walk across that stage, I know those, many of their stories and how they got there and what they had to deal with, and we've been through it together, and I love seeing students thrive and become who they are, and really to find their voice. A lot of students find their voice when they come to Transy, and that's really exciting to witness.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my gosh. So this is really hard, because the first thing that comes to mind seems kind of selfish, but it's that I get to keep learning, and especially in my field, like the field of genetics and developmental biology, I mean, it is progressing at such a rapid rate. And so truly, every time I teach a course, major discoveries have been made, or even societal issues have changed. So we are looking at the problem differently and have different considerations. So, I mean, so I say, I love that I get to learn all the time. But as I'm saying that, then I also say that I get to share my enthusiasm for the learning with students, and and if I can get them excited, then that's just the absolute best feeling for me. So I think that's, yeah, just the enthusiasm for learning.
Because our brains are hardwired to connect with other people. We're social beings. And that means that the more information we have, the easier it is to decide whether we want to connect with those people or not. And that means that our most successful interactions happen when we meet people face to face. Now, this connection we've just made, you and me, that wouldn't have been nearly as effective if all I'd done is send you this message. Because we know that non-verbal communication is essential. And yet, with the exception of video calls, we also know that we have to cope without it. So how do we compensate? How do we make every digital connection count? Well, the truth is, we can't. It's not going to be perfect every time, but what we can do is control the risk of making a mistake. Because communicating on digital media is essentially a risk management exercise. So what we need to do is remember that we reply within seconds, and then garble our response by not thinking it through. That's not good. Because the speed at which we're able to connect with people, that ought to make it more effective, oughtn't it? But the fact is that misunderstandings are far more frequent than they were.
We're gonna play a game, all right? It's a lot of fun, I promise. Look, you can either sit in your seats reading those workbooks, or you can play a game. Either way, you're in here till the bell rings, okay? This is called the line game. I'm gonna ask you a question. If that question applies to you, you step onto the line, and then step back away for the next question. Easy, right? The first question. How many of you have the new Snoop Dogg album? Okay, back away. Next question. How many of you have seen Boys in the Hood? Okay, next question. How many of you live in the projects? How many of you know someone, a friend or relative, who was or is in juvenile hall or jail? How many of you have been in juvenile hall or jail for any length of time? Does the refugee camp count? You decide. How many of you know where to get drugs right now? How many of you know someone in a gang? How many of you are gang members? Okay, that was a stupid question, wasn't it? Yeah. Not allowed gang affiliations in school. I apologize for asking, my badness. Okay, Now I'm going to ask you a more serious question. Stand on the line if you've lost a friend to gang violence. Stay on the line if you've lost more than one friend. 3. 4 or more. Okay, I'd like us to pay respect to those people now. Wherever you are, just speak their name. Thank you all very much.